The translator nodes clicked softly in the chamber, every syllable reshaping itself into something Aaron Briggs could understand. He sat rigid in his chair, hands clasped to keep them from shaking, as rows of alien delegates murmured like a restless tide. The council speaker, a being with skin like polished glass, tilted his head and spoke with a cutting calm. The species designated Terran, Origin World Soul 3, has been evaluated. Outcome unanimous. Primitive. Volatile. Disqualified from ascension. There was a pause, long enough for the words to settle like dust. Then came the laughter. Not roaring, not even cruel in tone, but worse, dismissive. Amusement rippled through the tiers of the chamber, as if humanity's entire struggle to reach the stars was no more than a child's attempt at mimicry. Aaron's jaw locked. He wanted to slam his fist against the polished surface of the table, but he forced himself still. His pulse pounded in his ears as he looked past the curved rows of shimmering forms, catching the glint of his own reflection in the glass walls. A human face, drawn and pale, sitting alone among predators. Beside him, Representative Laura Mercer leaned closer, her voice low but edged. "Don't take the bait. We need to keep our seat at this table." "They just took our colonies off it," Aaron muttered, his voice rasping from the tension he held back. The speaker raised his long fingers and silence rippled across the hall. "The colonies your kind attempted to seize beyond your reach have been granted to the Orith Combine, rightful stewards of that sector. Be thankful. We allow you to remain in your cradle. Few species receive such mercy." Aaron felt the heat rise in his chest. Mercy. That word coiled inside him like poison. He thought of the people who had built those colonies with their own hands, breathing thin air through failing recyclers, hauling steel beams across barren ground while dreaming of freedom. Now their home was being handed away with a gesture and a smirk. He could taste iron at the back of his throat. "They're not even pretending this is fair," Laura whispered. "It was never meant to be." Aaron's voice was flat, but his hands were trembling now. He pressed his palms against his knees to still them. From the opposite tier, a scaled delegate leaned toward its microphone. Its words came smooth and sharp. "Your kind still fuels engines with chemical fire. You hammer steel into war machines. What claim do you imagine you hold over civilized space?" The hall broke again into faint amusement. Aaron leaned into his own mic, his voice clipped, barely restrained. "The claim that we bled for it. That we lost sons and daughters on frozen rocks and barren dust just to plant a flag and make it livable. That's the claim." The speaker cut across him like a knife through cloth. "This session is closed. Humanity has been heard and judged. Be grateful your presence here was not revoked entirely." The gavel's strike echoed like the crack of bone. Delegates rose from their floating chairs, their conversations already turning to other matters, dismissing the humans as if they were shadows on the wall. Aaron stayed seated, staring at the polished surface of the table, feeling the weight of silence press down on his ribs. Laura exhaled shakily beside him. "They don't care if we starve out there. They wanted us humiliated." Aaron finally rose, his movement slow, deliberate, each muscle wound tight. "Then they're going to learn something," he said, his voice low, steady, dangerous in its restraint. "They can call us primitive all they want. But when they take what's ours, they'll see what primitive does when it's cornered." As he turned to leave, the vast chamber lights dimmed behind him. Delegates whispered and drifted away, their robes shimmering like oil in water. Aaron walked out with his shoulders square, the words still burning in his chest. Outside, the human delegation's shuttle waited in the docking ring. Beyond its hull stretched the cold shimmer of stars. Aaron paused, looking at the void. The council thought Earth was weak. They thought Terran steel was something to laugh at. The shuttle's hatch opened with a hiss. Inside, his comm officer rushed forward, pale and shaking. "Captain, urgent transmission. One of our colonies just sent a distress call. They're under attack." The words fell heavy. Aaron didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, staring through the hatch into the dim cabin light, the echo of the council's laughter still rattling inside his skull. Finally, he stepped aboard. His jaw tightened as the hatch sealed behind him. "Plot the course," he said. "We're going home." The jump burned across the fleet's hulls like static. Metal groaned as the transition spat them back into real space, stars snapping into clarity. Aaron sat in the command chair, his eyes fixed on the tactical display that flickered with a half-second delay. Around him, the bridge hummed with the tension of a crew that already knew the distress call had probably come too late. "Multiple contacts ahead," the sensor officer said, her voice a notch higher than usual. "Orith ships. At least a dozen. Maybe more." The bridge fell quiet. The Orith Combine had arrived first. Aaron kept his voice steady. "Identify their formation." "They're spread wide, sir. Looks like they expected transports, not warships." That gave him a small opening. The Orith thought Earth would send pleas, not guns. "Bring us forward," Aaron said. "Line abreast. Shields on full." There was no real confidence in their shielding. Human ships didn't run on elegant plasma cocoons like the Council navies. Their fields were patchwork, old generation tech that leaked like cracked glass. Their real defense had always been steel. Kilometers of reinforced plating, ugly and heavy, designed to keep crews alive when the shielding inevitably failed. On the main screen, the colony came into view, half a planet cloaked in smoke. Surface fires flared like scattered sparks against the darkness. Aaron felt his throat tighten, imagining families crammed into shelters, waiting for help that might never arrive. "Orith ships are hailing," the comms officer said. Aaron nodded once. "Put them through." The projection that filled the display was lean and sharp, a reptilian face with a sneer that almost passed for a smile. "Terran fleet," the voice hissed, guttural but clear. "This system belongs to the Combine. Your people will be processed. Leave now, and you may live long enough to crawl back to your cradle." Aaron didn't even blink. "You came to our homes, killed our colonists, and burned their ground. You think we're leaving?" The Orith leaned forward, unbothered by the challenge. "We think you are primitive. And primitives die quickly." The channel cut. For a moment, silence gripped the bridge. Then Sarah Whitaker's voice cut in from the secondary console, steady but tight. "Orders, Captain?" Aaron looked at her. Her hair was cropped short, bandages still peeking under her uniform collar from the last skirmish weeks ago. She was too young to look that tired, but her eyes had the same fire his did. "Orders," he said softly, almost to himself. Then louder, his voice ringing across the bridge. "Battle stations. All ships, prepare to engage." The first strike came before the order finished carrying across the fleet. Orith beams lanced through space, white-hot arcs of plasma that cracked against human hulls. One of the destroyers flared bright on the edge of the formation, its shielding collapsing instantly. Impact on Cleveland. "She's venting atmosphere. Get her patched or she's gone," Aaron snapped. His fleet returned fire. Missiles streaked out, fat and ungainly compared to sleek alien beams, but when they struck hard. Explosions rippled across an Orith frigate, tearing it in half. The humans didn't have elegance, but they had payloads big enough to tear through anything unlucky enough not to dodge. The bridge shuddered as another blast rattled their shields. Sparks spat from a side console. Crews scrambled to patch systems. Sarah gripped her chair, knuckles white. "We're outgunned." Aaron's jaw clenched. "Not out yet." "Sir," the tactical officer said, "if we pull back, we might save 2/3 of the fleet." "No," his voice cut like steel. He turned to face the crew. "They want this colony. We're not handing it over. We hold here." The silence that followed wasn't hesitation. It was grim acceptance. His crew knew what staying meant, and none of them moved to protest again. The Orith regrouped, adjusting to the humans' stubbornness. 2 cruisers bore down on Aaron's flagship, energy beams stitching across the hull. Panels blew out, smoke curling through the bridge. Shields failing on starboard side. "Turn us into it," Aaron ordered. The helmsman spun, shocked. "Sir?" "Do it. The hull's thicker there. Let them break their teeth." The ship swung hard, metal screaming as another blast struck. The deck lurched, alarms shrieking. But the hull held, groaning under the strain but refusing to crack. "Return fire," Aaron barked. Rail cannons spat molten metal slugs, tearing into the first Orith cruiser. The alien ship wavered, shield sparking, before its reactor went up in a flare that lit the black. The bridge erupted in a cheer, cut short as another blast slammed into their stern. "Sir, the Hastings is gone," Sarah said quietly, her voice breaking for the first time. Aaron shut his eyes briefly, forcing the grief down. There was no time for it. Not yet. "Keep firing," he growled. The battle dragged on like a knife fight in the dark. Every hit felt like it might be the last, but the humans refused to fold. The Orith grew bolder, then confused, then unsettled as ship after ship of theirs went down under human fire. Primitive, they had called them. Yet the primitives refused to break. Finally, with their numbers bleeding, the Orith pulled back. One by one their ships blinked into jump space, retreating with a bitter hiss of engines. The humans were left drifting in the ruins of their own victory. The bridge lights flickered, smoke curling from broken panels. Crew slumped in exhaustion, bloodied and soot-streaked. Sarah leaned against her console, chest heaving. Aaron stood, the adrenaline burning out of him, leaving only the weight. Status: 7 ships gone. 3 more crippled. Casualty reports still coming in. The words hit harder than any beam. 7 ships, thousands of lives, gone in the span of an hour. He gripped the rail, forcing himself to stay upright. They had won. But it didn't feel like winning. The comm officer's voice broke the silence. "Captain, there's more. Multiple colonies reporting attacks." This wasn't isolated. Aaron looked at the smoke-filled bridge, at the weary faces of his crew, at the stars flickering beyond the viewport. The Council's insult rang again in his ears. Primitive. Volatile. Unworthy. He knew then that this was only the beginning. "Plot a course for the nearest colony," he said. His voice was hoarse but unyielding. "We move now." And as the fleet turned in the dark, battered but alive, Aaron felt the weight of what was coming. The Council hadn't just dismissed them. They had set the galaxy on a path that would demand everything humanity had left. The part ended not with relief, but with the knowledge that the real war had just begun. The docking clamps locked with a dull clang that seemed too final. Aaron stepped off the shuttle into the hangar bay, the air thick with the tang of scorched metal and fuel leaks. The floor crews were already swarming over the battered hulls that had limped home from the ambush, welding plates over breaches, dragging out bodies that hadn't made it to the med bays in time. Everywhere he looked there were faces streaked with grime, eyes hollow from what they had just survived. They'd won, but the victory had cost so much that no one felt like celebrating. Sarah Whitaker followed him down the ramp, her left arm still in a sling from the bridge collapse that had nearly killed her. She caught his look and shook her head. "Don't even try to tell me to get checked again. The medics already cleared me." Aaron almost smiled, but it faded before it could form. "Cleared you to walk, not to fight." She ignored him, falling into step at his side. "People need to see their officers upright. Otherwise, they'll think the fleet's already finished." The hangar fell silent as they passed. Crew members straightened, watching the captain and his second with something heavier than respect. They were clinging to them. Aaron hated that weight, but he carried it anyway. The council chamber on Earth was nothing like the interstellar one. Here it was steel and glass, rows of weary men and women, most of them leaders who had once thought their positions meant arguing over trade disputes and colony budgets. Now they were presiding over survival. Aaron stood at the center, his uniform burned and patched, his expression carved from stone. "They didn't just raid one world," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "The Orith hit 4 colonies. 2 are gone. A third is evacuating under fire. And the Council isn't coming. They knew this would happen. They wanted it." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some were outrage, others fear. One man slammed his palm against the desk. "You're suggesting the Concord deliberately fed us to them?" Aaron's gaze swept across them, unflinching. "I'm not suggesting. I was there. I saw how they laughed when they stripped our claim. They gave the Orith those colonies. Then they sent their fleets to watch us burn. The chamber quieted. Even those who wanted to dismiss it couldn't ignore the evidence anymore. Representative Laura Mercer rose from her seat, her hands steady on the railing. So what do you propose, Captain? You want us to take our few remaining ships and charge back into a fight we can't win? Aaron didn't flinch. I want us to build. To fight with what we have, not with what they think we need. If they call us primitive, then let them choke on primitive. His words struck something in the room, though not everyone looked convinced. Some exchanged glances filled with fear, others with resolve. Back in orbit, the shipyards had changed. Civilian freighters were lined up like cattle, their cargo holds ripped open and stuffed with missile racks. Old tugboats had armor plates welded onto their flanks. It was desperate, ugly work, but there was a grim determination in every worker's movements. Welders hammered until their ears rang, engineers scrounged parts from scrap piles, and retired veterans returned to the yards to share half-forgotten tricks. Sarah stood beside Aaron on the observation deck, watching sparks rain across the dark void as another freighter was reborn into a warship. "This isn't a fleet," she said softly. "It's a scrapyard with guns." Aaron's eyes didn't leave the viewport. "It's what we've got." She turned to him, her voice low, urgent. "We can't keep reacting. Every time we wait, we lose another colony. We should strike first, while they still think we're weak." He finally met her gaze. She looked younger here, stripped of her command presence, anger holding back grief. He wanted to tell her she was right. He wanted to tell her that he had already thought the same thing. But the image of the Hastings tearing apart under enemy fire flashed through his mind, and he couldn't force the words out. "If we rush in half-prepared, we'll lose everything," he said. "Sometimes restraint saves lives." She shook her head, her frustration raw. "Sometimes restraint just gets people killed slower." They held the silence between them, heavy with everything they hadn't said since the last battle. It was later that night when the message reached him. A quiet ping on a secure channel, something routed through 5 different relays before reaching his quarters. He opened it, expecting another casualty list. Instead, a face flickered into view, a Concord delegate he recognized, one who had remained silent during the session. "Captain Briggs," the delegate's voice whispered, distorted by interference. "You must understand. The Council doesn't fear your fleets. They fear your existence. A species that rises with steel instead of circuits. You remind them of what they buried centuries ago. They will not let you stand. They will bleed you until nothing is left." Aaron's fists tightened. "Why tell me this? Why risk it?" The delegate hesitated, their alien eyes unreadable. "Because some of us wonder if the galaxy still needs your kind. The ones who fight when logic says to yield. The ones too stubborn to die when told to." The message cut off, leaving only static. Aaron sat alone in the dim light, the words echoing. Too stubborn to die. He thought of the faces in the hangar, the welders, the scarred crews who refused to stop. Maybe that was what they had left. 2 days later, the fleet gathered. It wasn't sleek, it wasn't beautiful. It was a patchwork of half-repaired destroyers, armored freighters, and crews who had already buried too many of their own. On the bridge, Aaron gave the order. "Set course for Epsilon 9. They're hitting it next. If they want us broken, they'll have to break us face to face." The fleet surged into the dark, engines flaring like sparks against the abyss. As the stars stretched around them, Sarah turned to him, her eyes hard but steady. "You know they'll throw everything at us there." Aaron's voice was quiet, but it carried. "Then we'll throw everything back." The crew worked in silence, the weight of what awaited them pressing down like a storm on the horizon. Every man and woman knew the truth. This wasn't just another skirmish. This would be the test. And deep in his chest, Aaron felt it too. If they lost here, humanity might never rise again. The fleet dropped into Epsilon 9 on the edge of fire. The colony planet was a smoldering ember beneath them, its atmosphere glowing with the haze of orbital bombardments. Dozens of Orith ships clustered around the world like carrion feeders circling a corpse, their silver hulls glinting with the cold precision of machines built for killing. "Contacts confirmed," the sensor officer said, voice trembling as she read the incoming waveforms. 32 Orith ships. At least 3 cruisers. More inbound. They knew we were coming. The bridge held still. No one spoke for a long moment. Aaron's throat felt raw, but his voice was steady when it finally came. "Transmit to all ships. Formation Delta 5. Hold the line." Engines roared, burning hard as humanity's patchwork fleet shifted into a wide spread. From battered destroyers to armored freighters that looked like someone had bolted cannons onto city buses, the Terran formation was ugly, heavy, and painfully slow. The Orith cruisers glided into their path with almost smug elegance. Sarah Whitaker leaned closer from her console. "We're outnumbered 3-1. They'll shred us before we close range." Aaron's eyes didn't leave the tactical screen. "Only if we play by their rules." The first volley came swift and merciless. Plasma lances screamed across the void, hammering into Terran shields that flared once, then failed. The Raleigh exploded in a flare of debris before she could even fire. Shields collapsing across the fleet. "Compensate with hull angle. Reinforce where you can." Aaron barked, already knowing it wouldn't be enough. But the fleet pressed forward. Metal hulls howled as they absorbed fire meant to vaporize shields. Armor blistered, decks tore apart, but the ships kept coming. On the comm-net, voices of captains and crews rose together. Some calm, some laughing like lunatics in the face of annihilation. "Starboard plating's gone, Captain. Then turn port and make them work for it." Another voice, dry with gallows humor. "If my ship blows, I expect someone to avenge me with style." Laughter cut through the static, sharp and raw, and it unsettled the Orith more than any cannon shot. "Range closing," Sarah called. "Fire everything," Aaron ordered. And they did. Human missiles screamed into the dark in swarms, fat and clumsy compared to precision alien torpedoes. But when they struck with brutal certainty. One Orith frigate bloomed into fire, then another and another. Shrapnel littered the void. The Orith adjusted, pulling back into shield formations, beams tearing through Terran hulls with surgical precision. The Gideon was gutted, venting crew into the void. The Newport tried to ram a cruiser and broke apart before she could connect. Aaron gripped the railing until his knuckles bled. "Push harder. Close the distance." Sarah turned on him. "If we close, we'll be torn apart." He looked at her, eyes burning. "If we don't, we're dead anyway." The fleet roared forward, engines flaring with overdrive surges that rattled decks and strained reactors past safe limits. Human ships forced the distance down, kilometer by kilometer, until the Orith formations began to fracture. And then came the moment. "Captain!" the tactical officer shouted, voice breaking with shock. Rail guns locked. Aaron's jaw tightened. "Fire!" The flagship's rail cannons spat tungsten rods into the void at a fraction of light speed. They weren't elegant beams of plasma, but pure, unrelenting mass. The first slug punched through an Orith cruiser's shimmering shield as if it wasn't even there, then tore straight through its core, splitting it into 2 molten halves. The bridge shook with the thunder of human voices as the crew erupted in cheers. More railguns fired across the fleet, primitive weapons against advanced defenses, and ship after ship of the Orith line buckled under the force. Shields, designed to absorb energy, crumpled against sheer kinetic brutality. "Captain," Sarah whispered, eyes wide. "It's working." Aaron didn't smile. His voice was iron. "Then keep hitting them. Break every one of them." The battle descended into chaos. Sarah led a squadron of retrofitted freighters on a suicidal dive, punching holes in the Orith lines with missile salvos. Half her ships didn't come back, but the gap they tore open let destroyers surge through and hammer the enemy's core. The Concordia, once a cargo tug, rammed an Orith cruiser broadside, gouging its hull open with steel plating before detonating its reactor. The explosion lit the void like a second sun. Aaron's flagship staggered under hit after hit, hull plates peeling away, fires spreading across compartments. Alarms screamed as the reactor ran hot enough to cook the crew alive. "Reactor at redline," an ensign shouted. If we don't pull back, we hold, Aaron snapped. Until they're broken. The ensign swallowed hard, then nodded. No one disobeyed. For every victory, there was a loss. The Fargo burned in silence, its crew still transmitting a final message as the flames consumed them. The Stanton drifted powerless, her captain refusing to abandon ship, using her as a shield to block fire for the others. But slowly, impossibly, the Orith line cracked. Their cruisers fell back, regrouping under the weight of losses they hadn't anticipated. "Sir," Sarah's voice came through the comm, ragged but alive. "We can break them. One more push." Aaron opened his mouth to give the order. Then every console lit red. "New contacts," the sensor officer whispered, pale. "Massive fleet incoming." On the screen, dozens of new signatures tore into real space. Sleek hulls, gleaming banners, weapons hot. Not Orith this time. Council ships. The comms flared to life with the Council speaker's cold, echoing tone. "This engagement violates interstellar law. All Terran vessels are ordered to stand down. Resistance will be met with annihilation." The bridge froze. Aaron stared at the screen, the sight of hundreds of Council warships arrayed against them, and he felt the last pieces lock into place. The Orith had been a blade, but the Council was the hand that guided it. Sarah's voice cut through the silence, quiet but steady. "What do we do, Captain?" Aaron's eyes narrowed. His voice was low, dangerous, unyielding. "We show them what primitive looks like when it refuses to kneel." Silence hung heavy on the bridge after the Council's command. It wasn't the silence of peace, but the kind that came before a blade fell. The Council fleet stretched across the void like a wall of silver light, thousands of guns already locked on the ragged Terran line. Their hulls gleamed, polished, proud, each ship carrying the arrogance of a species that had ruled the stars unchallenged for centuries. Against them, the Terran fleet looked like rust held together with tape and stubbornness. Aaron's hand tightened on the armrest of his command chair. Every instinct screamed at him to bow, to buy time, to survive. But something colder, heavier, kept him anchored. He had watched too many die to bend now. The Council speaker's voice cut through again, flat and clinical. "Terran vessels, stand down immediately. This conflict is not yours to fight. You have trespassed in Orith affairs, and now you trespass upon ours. Your survival depends on compliance." Sarah spat onto the floor, her face pale under the harsh glow of the consoles. "They were never going to let us live. Doesn't matter what we do." Aaron looked across the bridge at his crew. Faces scarred by fire, grime smeared on uniforms, eyes bloodshot from too many hours without sleep. They were tired, broken, but alive. And every one of them was watching him now, waiting for a choice. He spoke quietly, almost like he was afraid the void itself might overhear. "Send to fleet. Prepare emergency burn. All ships ready weapons. If we go together." The comms officer hesitated. "Sir, are you certain?" Aaron didn't blink. "I'd rather die on my feet than leave Earth chained." The fleet moved. Engines flared, hulls shuddered, guns powered up with a low thrum that carried across the commnet. The Orith survivors, crippled and smoldering, scattered at the sight of the Council's advance, leaving the humans alone in the storm. A Council battleship shifted forward. Its profile dwarfed the largest Terran cruiser, its weapon banks glowing brighter with each passing second. "They're charging their lances," Sarah warned. "They'll fire in seconds." Aaron gave a single nod. "Then we don't give them seconds." The order went out, and the Terran fleet lunged. Every surviving ship, no matter how damaged, pushed forward in one suicidal charge. Engines screamed as reactors overloaded. Shields flickered, sputtered, died. Missiles streaked out first, a chaotic swarm that blotted out the stars. The Council lances cut through them, detonating warheads prematurely, but a few slipped past, slamming into polished hulls and denting that pristine arrogance. Then came the railguns. The thunder of tungsten slugs filled the void, tearing through Council shields the way they had torn through the Orith. Sparks burst like fireworks across alien armor, but the enemy line barely staggered. The Council responded. Beams of white energy slashed through space, precise and merciless. The Montreal was sliced in half, venting her crew in a silent cascade of frozen bodies. The Saratoga simply disappeared in a ball of light. The Terran fleet buckled, but it did not stop. On the comms, the voices came in broken bursts. "This is the Liberty. Taking fire, reactor breach in. Don't stop, keep pushing. For Earth. For the colonies." Aaron's knuckles split open as he gripped the railing, but his voice carried calm authority across the net. "Keep pressure. Don't break. Every meter we close is another blow they didn't expect." Sarah's squadron darted into the gap, her freighters shedding armor plates like burning skin. One by one they detonated reactors, taking Council escorts down with them. She guided the last of her wing close enough to ram, her voice hoarse as she transmitted. "Tell my family I didn't back down." The feed cut as her ship tore into a frigate, the explosion blooming like a second sun. Aaron closed his eyes for half a breath, then forced them open again. He couldn't grieve. Not yet. The Council fleet pressed harder, but something strange began to ripple through their formation. For the first time, they weren't advancing with calm precision. They were adjusting, regrouping, correcting. Aaron saw it. He knew what it meant. "They didn't expect us to last this long," he muttered. The tactical officer turned, sweat running down his face. "What do we do with that, sir?" Aaron's voice hardened. "We make them bleed for every second of arrogance." The flagship's hull groaned as another lance tore through the port side. Fire suppression failed, oxygen vented into the black. Aaron ignored it. "Overload the reactor coils," he ordered. The engineering officer's eyes widened. "Captain, that'll..." "Do it," Aaron snapped. "If we're going to die, we're going to make sure the Council remembers it." The crew moved without hesitation. There was no fear left, only grim resolve. As the flagship angled into the heart of the Council line, Aaron leaned forward, his voice low and steady over the fleet-wide comm. "This is humanity's stand. Not for today. Not for tomorrow. For every year they thought we weren't worth a damn. If they want to end us, they'll choke on our bones." Across the net, voices rose in answer. Some screamed. Some laughed. Some whispered prayers. But they were united. One sound carried across the void, defiant and unbroken. The reactor heat climbed. The Council ships loomed closer. The bridge shook under constant fire. Aaron looked at the tactical screen one last time, at the flickering icons of ships that had fought longer than anyone believed possible. His final order left his lips in a voice like steel. "Burn everything." The flagship surged forward, engines flaring brighter than they ever had, the hull glowing red with heat. The last Terran guns thundered, slugs ripping into Council ships at point-blank range. And then the screen went white.